Hello everyone, my name is Rob, welcome to Kinetic Rugby League. In this video I'll be giving you my Super League Round 21 power rankings. Let's get started. Starting in 12th place and still in 12th place I have Hull FC. Initially kind of seen as a good effort bringing things back into Leigh. Initially when they were 12-0 down, brought it back to 12-all, and then just to allow Leigh to run away with that game, not a great look. They're still kind of doing a few things here and there that look okay, a little bit better than it used to be, but they're still miles off as a team. I don't really see them competing with many other teams closely. There's a few near the bottom like London, maybe Huddersfield, maybe Castleford, but beyond that I don't really see them picking up any more wins other than if they're to play those opponents. I don't know specifically who they've got, but yeah, they're a poor team right now. Unfortunately, have been all season. I don't really have many positives. It's just on both sides of the ball, really lacking. But Hull FC still in 12th. Moving on to 11th, and still in 11th, I have the London Broncos. I think their attack against Warrington looked really, really impressive. Even when they went a man down towards the back end of the game, they still spread the ball really well. Their intent was great. They actually opened things up. It wasn't just trying to throw the ball around and see what happens. They were throwing around good shapes, opening up Warrington's defence, and actually looked effective. And I said this in my TikTok video, post-match, they looked like a Super League level team. It didn't look good for London, it looked good for Super League. So I'm just really proud of them to put on a performance like that. But can they keep it consistent? Can they maintain it? Their attack over the last couple of weeks has been great by their standards, and then looking good by Super League standards, which is fantastic. Because I want to see more tests from London, trying to throw up a few question marks for teams. Don't like seeing it against Warrington, but I'm happy that, they're not this free win. They can maybe be a bogey team for some others in Super League. And can they make some of the playoff hopes or top 3, top 4 hopes interesting for some other teams? So we'll see. But London Broncos still in 11th. Moving on to 10th place, and still in 10th place I have the Huddersfield Giants. You could say it was a pretty good effort against Catalans last time out. Not too bad. There's still a little bit off. I think sometimes in attack they look a bit slow, a bit unorganised, but definitely looked a bit better last round. Defensively, there's still some holes. They're not a perfect team, but I think a little bit like London and possibly Castleford as well. They could be tricky for some playoff hopes. I don't really see when the next win's coming unless it is from other teams like near the bottom of the ladder. But yeah, as I pretty much said from last week, still some things to learn. Can they bring some young lads through? Can Luke Robinson develop as a coach? I think that's all the real focus is right now, and just getting a bit of pride out of these last few performances in the Super League season. But yeah, there's not really too much to sing and dance about. Complaints are pretty standard from Huddersfield. Not generally good enough in attack, not generally good enough in defence, but a good effort, I suppose, taking Catalans all the way as they did. But yeah, Huddersfield Giants still in 10th. Moving on to 9th place, and still in 9th place I have the Castleford Tigers. A little bit like Huddersfield as well, they can be disruptive, or as I said in that section anyway, they can be disruptive for top 6 chances, they can be disruptive for the top 2, top 3. So there's a little bit that Castleford can have as a say during the rest of this regular season. Maybe they've lost a little bit of sting that they had a few weeks ago, but granted, the last 2 opponents are really strong, Hull KR and Leigh, so it's not the worst thing in the world. I'd say on the attacking side, I think there's a lot more good than bad. There's still some bad moments in there where they've struggled, but definitely looking a lot better. And on the defensive side, it's a bit 50-50. It can go on either end of the spectrum, really, on the defensive side for Cass, but I think the most important thing for them, like Huddersfield, is learning what they can. Lingard, can he develop with this team? Can they bring some youngsters through? Can they sort of figure out a plan for what they want? I've not really heard too much in terms of transfers for Cass. I haven't really heard much. So if this team is pretty much going to be the same going into next year, it's just focusing on the small details that they can learn. There's not really as much pressure on the team now as there's no top 6 chances. So maybe there's just a lot to learn taking into next season and just have a much better start and maybe be a tricky team and actually fight for top 6 next year. We'll see. But yeah, Castleford Tigers still in 9th. Moving on to 8th place, and still in 8th place I have the Leeds Rhinos. They are looking a lot better, a lot more confident on both sides of the ball in attack. a bit more free-flowing, a little bit more organised as well. On the defensive side, a bit more disciplined as well. So not perfect by any means, but certainly better. New lease of life, new level of energy. They just seem a bit more confident all around, which is good for them going forward, especially, making such a drastic change, getting rid of their head coach in the point of the season that they were in, and just being right on the edge of playoffs. They must have a lot more confidence now in being able to make that top six because they were really starting to look like they could drift away. And then making this change, a lot of confidence, looking better. There's a real chance that they can make playoffs now. I thought that, a few weeks ago, a little bit before Brad Arthur came in, that was them done. I just had no faith in them. But, they make a huge change, middle of the season, and they just look all the better for it. And that's because of Brad Arthur really, getting this team working on both sides of the ball. They've got great individuals. We've all known this. They've got some cracking players. But as a unit, they've just not been getting it done. But certainly look better. And I think it's the attack that's probably the most important thing for them going forwards. I think they'll still be found out in some games here and there on the defensive side. But the attack is what is going to keep them in this and possibly be their best chance of making the top six. So Leeds Rhinos still in 8th. Moving on to 7th place and moving down 1, I have the Catalan Dragons. A little side note, I'll try and keep this brief, but I tried to work out the playoff chances for the Castleford Tigers a few weeks ago. I made a spreadsheet of basically the teams above them up to about Saints, because I'd pretty much established that Warrington, Hull KR and Wigan were fine for top 6, but the rest had some kind of question marks over them. And I looked at their fixtures and worked out what does Castleford need specifically as the biggest underdog, the biggest dark horse to make top 6. And I worked it all out. And I thought, okay, well, if some things can go in their favour for Saints and for Salford, then they can nick one of their playoff spots. But Catalans, don't worry about Catalans, they'll be fine. Because they play London twice, they play Hull FC twice, and they've got some easy games such as Huddersfield. And then what do? They lose to London, and they almost lose to Huddersfield. I just don't know. They're the most inconsistent, good team, and they're just so annoying to predict for and against. Obviously not as difficult as Salford, but they're still pretty annoying, to be honest. I don't really know what the solution is for them. I have so little confidence in them making the top 6, but next week they could come out with the most annoyingly impressive statement victory against Hull KR. And then the following week, I don't know who they play next week, but could just absolutely shit the bed. So I just don't know what we're going to get from Catalans. But yeah, they're a little bit sluggish on the attacking side. Sometimes it can be okay defensively, but there's been found out a few too many times this season, even by poor teams. So yeah, they're just, I don't know. I've lost any kind of faith in them at this point. But Catalan Dragons down 1 in 7th. Moving on to 6th place and moving up 1, I have St Helens. At this point now, I think this is them fighting back after being pushed into a corner. I mentioned that a couple of weeks ago that, when Saints do get pushed into a corner, you're going to see them coming out swinging. They lost 5 games in a row and immediately after that battering against Leigh, turned things around with a strong statement win against Hull FC. Now, I know people will say it's just Hull FC, but, they'd been a bit tricky for some other teams at that time. And I didn't think Saints would walk all over them. I predicted 28-14 to Saints. So I thought they'd be somewhat comfortable, but it just wouldn't be a complete walkover. And they just battered them completely. And then they take on a Salford team that's certainly been tricky to predict. As you guys know. Thanks again, Salford. But Saints have been backed into a corner and now they're coming out swinging. And they're going to be very difficult for a lot of teams in these remaining games. And I think now that they've been through that period of the season, there's probably, some meetings, with the players and coaches about do we need to do things differently. Some of the senior players will have been stepping up. There's a, great chance for Lomax to have an impact in the changing room, say with Darryl Clark, Jack Wellesby. I know he's not playing, but he can still have an impact. So you need your senior players really to be involved and give the kids a lot of confidence that haven't been in these situations before. It's very high pressure for Saints now. Every game really matters for them at this point. So they're going to be annoying. They're going to be tricky for a lot of people. But well done to them for kind of turning things around after such a poor run of form. So St Helens up 1 in 6th. Moving on to 5th place, and still in 5th place, I have the Salford Red Devils. They continue to be an annoying team to predict. I just cannot seem to get it right. I actually can't remember the last time I got one of their games right. I can't remember. Now, if you just want to keep going against what I say, Salford, more power to you, sister. You keep going. You keep fighting that good fight. But I just can't be dealing with their shenanigans anymore. It's getting right on my nerves. Okay, Salford as a team, though, are still pretty, they're decent all-round on the attacking side, decent all-round on the defensive side, more good than bad, I'd say, but not perfect by any means. I think they play up to the occasion more, and I've said this a couple of times, they play up to the occasion, maybe get a bit complacent sometimes against lower teams, and that's why some of the results we've seen have been a lot closer than expected, but they tend to play up to an occasion. They can always make a game close, they can always rely on a kicking game, the kick chase, just the basics, hard work through the middle, with, a sprinkling of quality individual play here and there from some of the senior players. So, Salford is still a strong team. I think they need to find a little bit more consistency over these next couple of weeks going into playoffs. I think they'll be fine for playoffs. I think they'll be one of the teams that makes it. But they really do need to find some consistency and build up that confidence. Because they feel like a team right now that they could take on a Wigan or a Hull KR or a Warrington when they're on better form and be a complicated team. But against teams like London and Hull FC and Huddersfield, have some shockers and really kind of throw them off a little bit. They've got to find some confidence. That's the only thing for them. And also, just stop going against what I predict. Just stop it. It's getting stupid now. Grow up. Moving on to 4th place, and still in 4th place, I have the Leigh Leopards. I will say they are very close to jumping into that top 3. Seeing how performances go over the next couple of weeks, they could really break into it. So we'll have to keep an eye on Leigh, but they're looking really strong at the moment. They look really good in attack, flowing the ball really nicely. Defensively, it's still questionable at times, but I think we can fall back on their attack being really, really strong. I think the reason why they haven't broken into the top 3 just yet, there's 2 reasons. One is that the performance against Hull FC, not that it was expected, but we expected them to be comfortable against Hull FC. Based on their recent performances, we expected them to win the game. I don't think we really gave Hull FC much credit going into it, so we expected that. But the fact that they were as far off as they were against Wigan, it wasn't like the worst result to ever happen, but, they were beaten by a better team. They're not quite in that top 3 conversation just yet, but I think they are extremely close. And as I said, we'd have to look at the performances over the next couple of weeks. They could really break into the top 3. Playoffs is going to be so tricky for them. If they didn't have such a bad start to the season with all the injuries that they had, they could really be looking at a top 6 place as of right now, but it's going to be so tricky. And they're kind of in do or die mode right now. It's win or go home. This is knockout rugby for them because they need to win everything. They can't rely on Salford or Saints or Catalans, Leeds to lose for them. They've just got to take it in their own hands and just beat everybody that comes up, and maybe they'll get it done. But Leigh Leopards right now still in 4th. Moving on to 3rd place, and still in 3rd place, I have the Warrington Wolves. Their effort against London was just wasn't up to my standards at all. Really lacklustre effort. On the defensive side, too many holes, unfortunately. I think it was too close for my liking through the middle. I thought it would be a lot fitter, a lot stronger. I think there was some quick play of the balls, and that goes on the front foot at times. But really sloppy ball handling, too many knock-ons, too many penalties on the defensive side as well. A little bit one-dimensional. I know we didn't have George Williams, but a little bit one-dimensional as well. I was hoping for a bit more from Dufty. I was hoping to see more from Kai Taylor-Ray, but came on very late into the game. Started out as a winger at first. But yeah, I just think it was just very sloppy, and I think it's our individuals just being better than their individuals is what helped us just get it over the line in an 80-minute period. But yeah, I was getting nervous towards the end of the game, because if they'd scored in those last couple minutes, they spread the ball once as effectively as they kind of had done the whole game. They could really find a gap on the edges, especially on our right edge. They could have really found a gap and taken us to Golden Point. But London London did a great job, but Warrington, they need to find some confidence somewhere. I think we're starting to get backed into a corner now. The performance against Hull KR was not particularly great. The performance against London was not particularly great. It's going to be a real tough challenge against Leeds. I think just about right now, just hanging on to third place. Just about. But these last couple of weeks, a little bit like with Salford, Warrington need to find some consistency before going into playoffs, which I think they should easily make. I don't have any concerns about a top 6 spot, but I want the best spot possible for playoffs. And Warrington really need to kind of book their ideas up at this point. But Warrington Wolves still in third. Moving on to second place. Moving down one is the Wigan Warriors. I think, yes, they are missing some key players. Okay. But some of the defensive efforts and discipline, just some things they've been off. And I know Leeds have looked a little bit better, at least compared to where they were, but you just can't be losing like that. And given that you'd missed Field for so long, you've missed French for so long, and now you're going to miss Harry Smith for, I believe it was reported 3 to 5 weeks. It's not, as of time of recording, I've not heard specifically how long he's out for yet. But Smith could be out for a while. So you are going to be on the back foot with either missing your key man at number 6 that opens up teams, left, right and centre, your reliable fullback who is now back, fortunately for them, or your number 7 who controls the game for you. And yes, they've got individuals all over that can kind of pick up some of the slack, but you're missing some key players. And I think there's going to be a lot of big tests, maybe some losses in there that you wouldn't have expected a few months ago. But yeah, I think the attacking side, I think there'll still be a challenge for a lot of teams. And on the defensive side, I think they'll be okay. But with some of the kids in there, Farman's probably going to get some more game time now as well. And, you know, as he learned a lot from his defensive performance against Warrington a few weeks back, he will learn a lot over these next few weeks. And Wigan as a team, they'll kind of find out what they're made of. But Wigan down 1 in second. Moving on to first place and moving up 1, we have a new team in the number 1 spot. The first time it is not Saints or Wigan, we have Hull Kingston Rovers. Round of applause for you guys. Congratulations on such a high, prestigious award, being number 1 in my power rankings. I'm sure that means the absolute world to you. So, on the attacking side, they look great. Spreading the ball really, really nicely. As I've kind of mentioned a few months ago, even, Mikey Lewis does a great job commanding the team on one side, May does a great job on the other side. And Evalds is that kind of player that pops up left and right, that just helps to be that extra creative player to open things up with those sweeping runs. The energy, the fight, determination, the discipline they've got through the middle looks great at the moment, and the way they spread the ball looks fantastic. They look like a brick wall on the defensive side, which is great for them going forwards. You know, attack wins games, defense wins championships. That's what they say, especially in the NFL. But Hull KR look great right now, and their confidence must be at an all-time high, especially at this point in the season. You know, beating Warrington, just like beating Warrington would have been a good result, but the way that they beat Warrington was great for them. And then beating a kind of tricky team like Castleford with that kind of result, I thought that maybe the Tigers could have done a little bit something, maybe made it tricky like they did a few months ago. But to look so commanding in those 2 games, they must be really high in confidence, and, you know, they can ride that wave over the next couple of weeks, keep that consistency up going into playoffs. They could really get the League Leaders Shield. It's very, very tight at the top. So the most important thing from them is just not dropping the ball. You know, maybe they'll lose a game here and there. I'm not sure exactly who they play in the last couple of games. But if they've got some tricky games, I can understand it. But just don't drop the ball against those lower teams. Don't have one of those off days, especially against a bad team. Because then teams around you will smell blood in the water. And they'll start thinking they can nick that number 1 spot from you. But yeah, as of right now, great job from Hull KR. But right now, Hull Kingston Rovers up 1 in first. So that's going to be it for my Super League Round 21 power rankings. If you've got your own list, do let me know in the comments down below. Have I been fair, unfair about anything? Any thoughts I've not included? But yeah, do let me know. That's going to be it. Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you next time.